Hi, my name is Yasmin, and this is my conversion story. I grew up in Gilbert, Arizona, and my father is from the Middle East, and he is Muslim, and my mom is from Japan, and she is agnostic. When I was younger, my father put me in Islamic school, where I would learn the Arabic language and hundreds of Islamic prayers. And so I would pray with him and go to the mosque with him, but I never truly felt God. God in Islam is like an entity that is distant from us and someone that we must only obey. And it just didn't feel right, or I didn't ever feel God. And so I went through the motions to make my father happy, but I never truly found God throughout any of the prayers or the time that I spent practicing Islam. In junior high, I met my best friend Claire, whom I would sometimes sleep over at her house. And on some mornings, I went to Mass with her, and I always found Mass really strange. I was like, how do people know what to say at every moment, and why is there so much sudden standing and kneeling? And I felt excluded in a sense, and I thought, why am I pretending to say the words of the Mass and be here if I don't even know what's going on? On my own, I became agnostic in high school. I never felt God or felt that I wanted to obey the Islamic religion because I didn't agree with some of the teachings or the ideals of Islam. And God felt so far away from me, so I decided to push God away and never try to think about him. Since my best friend was Catholic, Claire, she would ask me to come to youth groups with her, but I thought they were strange, and I would go to their retreats and do their Bible groups, just pretend to fit in, but I didn't think anything of them. But I specifically remember when Claire asked me, "So, do you believe in God?" And I said, "I don't really know, but I think that a higher power exists." And she never tried to convince me of God, but little did I know that she was always praying for me. When I came to the U of A, I was able to build my own dependence from my parents and develop my own thoughts and routines. I was dorming with Claire, and one night I was out with a guy friend, and we got in a heated argument about God. He said, "There's no proof that God exists, and everybody is following a religion based on a book." And in my head, I still felt like there was a higher power, so I said to him, "Well, we can't see wind, but we can feel it. We can't see certain bacteria, but we can still get sick. Our bodies and nature are so mathematically perfect. There must be a higher power or a creator." And he continued to go against what I was saying, so I felt like I lost the argument because I didn't know enough about God or any religion to back myself up. And that's when I became curious. A few days later, I was approached by an FCC non-denominational recruiter, and she asked me, "If you died right now, would you think you'd go to heaven?" And I said, "No, I don't have time for this. I got to get to class." And she said the Lord told her to approach me and to keep her number in case I changed my mind. And so over the course of a few days, I thought to myself, even if I don't believe in religion or God, I still want to learn about it to be able to back myself up in an argument, whether I believed in God or not. So I called up the non-denominational recruiter, and I told her to tell me what she believed and why she so manifested in it. When I met up with her, I was shocked. She had the most incredible brightness in her eyes. I couldn't describe it, but she just looked so happy and beautiful while she was telling me about Jesus. And I went home thinking, what am I missing in my life that I don't look as happy, or I'm not as content with my life. She just looked so like fulfilled and loving, and so I continued to meet up with her, and she taught me some Bible verses. And now that I think about it, every time I saw this spark in her eyes when she told me that Jesus loves me and forgives me, I know that I felt and sensed Jesus in her eyes. So I would attend non-denominational church with her for a few weeks, but later on she ended up pressuring me into believing Jesus and being saved. And it was really hard for me to be pressured into something like that, especially when I wasn't even planning to become a Christian. So there was one weekend I was planning to go to a rave with my friends. And the week before that weekend, I met up with her, and she told me, I was praying this morning, and God asked me to ask you what you're doing this weekend. And I wasn't going to lie to her, because I thought if God really asked her that, then she must already know. So I told her I was going to a rave with my friends. And she told me to cancel my plan, so I did, because at that point I was afraid something bad was going to happen to me if I went through with it. And the next weekend she told me I would be speaking in tongues very soon, and I was really confused and weirded out, and so I eventually strayed away from her and decided to end contact with her. I believe that it was wrong of her to rush someone like me into believing. And after I strayed away from her, I ended up doing drugs and going to raves again, but I never got any sense of fulfillment in it. It was just awful. One weekend, Claire asked me to go to Mass with her. And this was like a few months later after I ended contact with the lady. And at this point, I felt really ready to give up my old life. But I was asking God alone in my room, do you really exist? And if you do, how would I really know? And I ended up becoming really emotional, but I didn't really know why at the time. What also convinced me to go to Mass with Claire was herself. She had always been a faithful Catholic who never judged me, loved me, supported me, and always had her head in the right direction. To me, she was someone who had set an example of what a truly good person was. So I decided I wanted to take a step in her shoes this time and see why she's a Catholic. So I went to Mass with her for the first time in years, and it was at the Newman Center. And as I observed the church, I felt really welcomed and comfortable. And during the Mass, as I knelt down with her, that was the first time I really felt God's presence. It was like so warm and peaceful and overwhelming. And it feels like this warm presence just filling my body from my head throughout my chest. And it was so different from when the times I would go to Mass with her in junior high, because this time was the very first time I was truly seeking Him. So fortunately, Claire's mother happened to be a catechism teacher. So I sat down with her as she explained everything from the beginning, from original sin to the Holy Trinity to the timeline of the prophets and Jesus. And it was a 3-hour-long lesson. And for some reason after that, I felt that everything that I had learned was clicking all in chronological order. And I was so shocked. But I felt that I really believed everything her mother was teaching me about the Bible. And a lot of what I have learned was completely different from the Quran and Muhammad, which came 600 years after and hundreds of miles away from Jesus' occurrence. So, as I continued to attend Mass every weekend, I really started to realize that the feeling God would give me as I started praying to Him was love. That warm, peaceful feeling that I had newly kept experience every time I prayed to Him. I felt that God was allowing me to experience this because He knew that I wouldn't have been convinced that I was in the right place when I first attended the Newman Center with Claire that day. The idea of God loving me was so new and refreshing and very unlike Islam, where God only loves believers. It just felt so right to be a Catholic because the teachings are consistent. It doesn't exclude books from the Bible, and that is where the first church originated in Catholicism. And so the tradition of the Masses are consistent and focused only on God, unlike many of the other Christian churches I attended previously. It was just so unique to me that Catholic Masses are focused on the presence of God and His Word only. And so Claire ended up telling me that she has been praying for me since she met me in the 7th grade, and that it had been a dream come true for me to believe in God. So I ended up going into RCIA classes, and there was a time where we did a lesson where 2 people were assigned partners. One person would be blindfolded and the other person would lead them out of the building. And so when I was being blindfolded and I was being led by the other person, it was scary. But it occurred to me that I was letting go of my old life and trusting God to lead me. And that's how it would feel. That I would not know my path, but God knows every possibility of my paths. So that if I continue to trust in God, I would not need to be worried about where my life will go, and how converting to another religion would not be a scary thing for me either. So after I was baptized, I felt that my spirit felt things a lot more intensely. Every action or word I would speak felt very sensitive, but it was really nice because I felt that I was finally filled with the Holy Spirit. And even when I would curse or smoke, I can feel my spirit trying to filter it out, like that I shouldn't do it, or I shouldn't be saying things. And so a few months after my baptism, I was praying to God, and I thought, I know that my sins were supposed to be washed away when I was baptized, but I felt that it was impossible since I did a lot of bad things in my old life, a lot of sinful stuff. And I didn't feel that I was worthy. I prayed for God to forgive my sins, and I prayed a rosary, and then I asked Him, are my sins really washed away? And right after that, I pulled a gospel gem, which is like a box full of cards with Bible verses on them, and the one I pulled said, Ezekiel 26:29, I will save you from all your uncleanliness. I will call for the grain and make it plentiful, that will not bring famine upon you. And that really clarified my question to Him. I learned that sometimes we get curious and go into things not knowing where it would lead. But if that we instinctively believed that nothing bad can come from it, it may be worth exploring. And so even though all this happened due to my curiosity from an argument with a friend, it had led me to greater knowledge and even better God's love and salvation. So looking back, I now know that God had a plan for me, and I had been able to follow the right path by beginning to trust Him. Normally, I would feel that I would be a lot more wary and afraid of telling my Muslim father about becoming a Catholic one day, but I'm not, because I know that God called me to be in the Catholic religion. As I pray to him, he always gives me the confidence to stand up for myself and continue to read and learn more about the Bible and the contradictions in Islam, so that I could prepare myself one day to tell my father when the right time comes. Right now, 5 years ago, I would have never seen myself speaking about this today and being a small group leader of the Newman Center. God really inspired me to become a small group leader in hopes of helping other non-believers like myself. And I thank God every day that he had guided me to find his light and receive salvation and love that I had not known before. Here is a song on the piano that I learned that represents how I've come to trust in God and my journey in Catholicism. I also want to dedicate it to the growth of the Newman Center and what a loving Catholic family I have there. The song is called Consolations No. 3 by Franz Liszt.